Most people never looked twice at Daniel, the quiet janitor with tired eyes and a faded blue uniform. He was invisible, just a man pushing a mop and emptying trash cans. But what no one knew was that Daniel carried a hidden gift so powerful, it would one day silence a crowded room, move people to tears, and change his life forever. Daniel's mornings began in silence, long before the city woke. The small alarm clock by his bed buzzed faintly at 4:30 a.m., and he would quickly press it off so the sound wouldn't disturb Emily. The dim light from the street lamp outside seeped through the thin curtains, casting a pale glow across their tiny apartment. Daniel moved carefully, slipping on his worn shoes and faded blue janitor's uniform that he had ironed the night before. Every movement was deliberate, quiet. He never wanted to break the peaceful rhythm of his daughter's sleep. He would pause for a moment at her bedside. Emily, only 8 years old, slept curled under a blanket that had once belonged to her mother. Her chest rose and fell gently, her small hand clutching the corner of the fabric. To Daniel, that soft, steady breathing was everything, his strength, his reason for waking up, his reason for enduring. He would smile faintly, even as a wave of heaviness pressed against his chest. Losing his wife had left a hole in his heart, but Emily kept him moving forward. She was the reason he got up before dawn every day. Outside, the morning air was sharp and cold, biting at his face as he stepped onto the cracked pavement. The streets were nearly empty, the world still heavy with sleep. Daniel's footsteps echoed softly as he made his way to the tall glass building downtown where he worked. His shoes, scuffed and worn thin, carried him forward out of habit more than energy. With each step, he thought about the bills stacked high on the kitchen counter, the rent notice that made his stomach twist, and the constant worry of how he would stretch each paycheck to cover food, school supplies, and doctor visits for Emily. At work, the building loomed over him like a monument to wealth. Inside, the marble floors shone under bright lights. Daniel pushed his mop bucket across them with quiet efficiency, wiping away muddy footprints, gathering coffee cups, and clearing trash bins that overflowed with discarded papers. His uniform, with his name stitched above the pocket, hung loosely on his thin frame. People in sharp suits walked past him briskly, phones pressed to their ears, voices full of deals and deadlines. To them, Daniel was part of the background, an invisible figure blending into the rhythm of the building. But Daniel carried something none of them could see. Beneath the tired eyes and calloused hands lived a part of him that hadn't been touched in years, a hidden gift, waiting, quietly, for its moment. Long before the world labeled him as just a janitor, Daniel had been something else, someone with a dream, a spark. Music had once been his language, the piano his voice. As a teenager, he would sit for hours on the creaky bench of the old upright piano in his neighbor's garage, his fingers stumbling at first, then finding their way into melodies that seemed to rise straight from his heart. Even without formal lessons, he could hear a song once and play it back almost perfectly. His high school music teacher often shook her head in disbelief, telling him he had a rare gift. But talent, no matter how bright, doesn't always outshine reality. Daniel's family didn't have money for lessons or instruments. College was out of reach. Instead of conservatories or concert halls, his future became about steady paychecks and survival. The melodies he once poured into the keys became memories, tucked away as responsibilities grew heavier. He married young, started a family, and when his wife fell ill, every ounce of time, money, and energy went into caring for her and their daughter. Music faded into silence, sacrificed to life's demands. Still, Daniel never completely let it go. Sometimes, when Emily had drifted off to sleep, he would hum softly in the kitchen while paying bills. His fingers would tap lightly against the table, tracing the shape of chords only he could hear. Those small stolen moments kept the ember alive, though it was hidden from the world. The office lobby where he worked had a symbol of the life he once imagined, a grand black piano. It stood gleaming in the corner, polished and untouched, more decoration than instrument. Executives passed by it daily without a second thought, but to Daniel, it was both a temptation and a reminder. Each time he pushed his mop past it, he felt a pang in his chest, an ache to sit down and let his fingers remember. But he never dared. To the people in this building, he was invisible, and invisible men didn't play pianos. Yet some nights, when exhaustion blurred his judgment, his gaze lingered a little longer on those ivory keys. He could almost hear the music in his head, almost feel the weight of the notes waiting under his fingers. It was as if the piano called to him, whispering reminders of the boy he used to be, of a gift he still carried deep within, one that had not yet been silenced completely. It was a rainy Thursday evening when everything began to shift. The office building buzzed with unusual energy. The executives were hosting a networking event in the lobby, the kind where champagne flowed freely, laughter echoed, and polished shoes clicked across the marble floors. For Daniel, it was just another long night of work. He pushed his mop bucket along the edge of the crowd, careful not to draw attention. He had learned long ago how to make himself disappear. But then his eyes fell on it, the piano. Normally ignored, tonight it gleamed under the soft lights as if waiting for someone to give it purpose. A group of employees gathered near it, joking about how no one knew how to play. One of them, half amused, said, "Maybe we should get the janitor to try. He's always staring at it." The comment was meant as a joke, a throwaway line, but suddenly eyes turned toward Daniel. He froze, the mop handle still in his hands. Heat crept up his neck as he felt the weight of their stares. He wasn't used to being noticed, let alone being invited, mockingly or not, into their world. He gave a small, nervous smile and shook his head. "I don't think so," he muttered, hoping they would turn back to their glasses and conversations. But they didn't. A few chuckled. One man, clearly amused at the idea, insisted, "Come on, give us a show. How hard can it be?" Their laughter wasn't cruel exactly, but it wasn't kind either. It was the kind of laughter that reminded Daniel of where he stood in their eyes. Just the janitor. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished floor he had scrubbed countless times. But then he thought of Emily. He thought of the nights he had hummed her to sleep, of the way her eyes sparkled when he told her stories about dreams and never giving up. What would she say if she saw him back away now, letting fear silence him? Slowly, almost against his will, Daniel set the mop aside. His hands trembled as he walked toward the piano, every step heavier than the last. The chatter in the room softened. For a moment, it felt as though the whole world had paused, waiting to see what the invisible man would do. Daniel pulled out the bench and sat down. His fingers hovered above the keys, hesitant yet alive. The familiar weight of possibility settled into his chest. And then, he pressed down on the first note. The first note rang out, soft but steady, cutting through the hum of conversation in the lobby. Heads turned. At first, no one expected much, it was just the janitor humoring their joke. But then Daniel's hands began to move, and everything changed. His fingers, though calloused from years of scrubbing floors and hauling bins, danced across the keys with surprising grace. The melody that poured out wasn't hesitant or broken, it was alive, full of emotion, weaving together notes that seemed to speak what words never could. The music rose and fell like a tide, gentle at first, then powerful, carrying the weight of loss, resilience, and hope. Conversations hushed. Champagne glasses paused midway to lips. People leaned in, drawn not just to the sound, but to the story it told. Somehow, in those notes, Daniel revealed a piece of himself that had been hidden, his struggles, his love for his daughter, the ache of losing his wife, and the quiet strength that carried him through each day. One by one, people gathered closer to the piano. Some exchanged stunned glances, others simply closed their eyes and let the music wash over them. The lobby, usually filled with cold formality, seemed transformed into something warmer, more human. Even the executives, men and women who had never noticed Daniel before, now watched with rapt attention. For Daniel, the moment felt almost unreal. His body knew what to do, even after years of silence. His fingers flowed instinctively, as though they had been waiting all this time for their chance to be heard again. He wasn't just playing notes, he was speaking through the piano, telling truths he couldn't put into words. He thought of Emily, of her laughter, her resilience, her belief that he could do anything. Each chord became a promise to her, each note a reminder that he hadn't completely lost himself to struggle. Somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt something awakening, a piece of the man he used to be returning to life. When the final note lingered in the air and slowly faded, the silence that followed was louder than any applause. For a heartbeat, the entire room seemed suspended in awe, staring at the man they had overlooked for so long. And then, the applause began. Daniel sat frozen, almost embarrassed by the attention. He lowered his gaze, his fingers resting still on the keys as if afraid to let go of the moment. His cheeks flushed, not from pride, but from disbelief. He had only wanted to touch the piano again, just for himself. He hadn't expected to be seen. From the staircase above, the lobby exploded with applause, hands clapping, voices cheering, the sound echoing against the tall marble walls. Some employees even whistled, while others blinked back tears they didn't expect to shed in an office building. For the first time, Daniel wasn't just the janitor in a faded blue shirt, he was the man who had just moved an entire room with nothing but music. A deep voice broke through the noise. That, it said, steady and full of emotion, was extraordinary. The crowd parted as Mr. Harrison, the CEO of the company, stepped forward. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, he descended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving Daniel. For years, Harrison had passed by the janitor without so much as a nod. But now, he looked at him as if meeting him for the very first time. Daniel rose from the bench instinctively, nervous, his hands rubbing together. "Sir, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." Harrison lifted a hand to stop him. "Don't apologize. You've given us a gift tonight." His voice softened, genuine admiration breaking through his usual formality. "Why didn't we know you could do this?" Daniel hesitated, his words quiet but steady. "Because music doesn't pay the bills," he said. "Mopping floors does." The honesty hit everyone in the room like a stone thrown into still water, rippling through their hearts. The employees who had once overlooked him now looked at him with respect, even guilt. They realized how blind they had been to the story behind the man they walked past every day. Harrison's gaze lingered on Daniel for a long moment. Then, with surprising warmth, he said, "Daniel, I want you to play at our charity gala next month. People need to hear this." Gasps echoed through the lobby. Daniel's eyes widened. He shook his head, fumbling. "Sir, I'm just—" "No," Harrison interrupted gently. "You're more than that. You have a gift. And gifts are meant to be shared." For the first time in years, Daniel felt seen, not as a janitor, not as a shadow, but as a man who mattered. That night, Daniel told Emily about the gala. Her eyes lit up, and she threw her arms around him. "Mom always said you had magic in your hands," she whispered. Tears filled his eyes as he held her close. For the first time in years, Daniel felt truly seen.